I think if anyone in the watch industry, whether it's a dealer, a collector, or an auctioneer, would have fallen into some hibernation type coma in the year 2000, and sort of like Snow White, you would kiss them awake in the year 2020 and say, can you please go back to your job or do as a collector what you've done before, I think they would be completely lost.
The flavor of 1 second is completely different today than 20 years ago.
21st century watchmaking has been so liberating for the watch industry in many respects.
And then suddenly 20 years later we find ourselves, after 16 years from the launch of Global 4C, it's really been quite a journey.
Mais c'était pas aussi facile que ça.
There's a lot of nostalgia with me these days.
Ça n'a jamais été un choix de carrière. Ce sont les hasards de la vie qui m'ont fait faire de l'horlogerie.
It's really the environment around the watchmaking community which has changed so much.
In the year 1999 and 2000 was when the big bang of the watch industry occurred.
It's become a big business, it's become very high profile, and even if people don't know or like watches, they're aware of it. They're aware that the watch business is something.
We all, our kind of generation of online folks, represented this change from what the industry wanted the media to cover to what enthusiasts actually cared about.
That kind of exploded the enthusiasm for watch collecting.
And this transfer from a mechanical piece to a piece of art has really happened in the last 20 years.
Well, of course, a lot of things have changed in 20 years, but even before that, the changes were preparing. I think we've seen more effect in 20 years, and our possibility, the creativity and innovation is something that has really gathered speed also, and a lot of it thanks to independent watchmakers.
If we speak about the rise of independent artisanal watchmaking, was the contributions made by George Daniels. Here was a man, an individual, who, with all his own personal endeavor, could make a handmade watch, right? This was flying in the face of prevailing convention at that period of time.
But then in Switzerland, you had Philippe Dufour, Vincent Calabrese, early 90s, François Pauljoun coming on board.
Je suis la plus petite des marques et le plus grand des indépendants, enfin des indépendants artisans, parce que Rolex et d'autres sont indépendants, Patek Philippe ou Chopard sont indépendants aussi. Donc j'avais fait une montre tourbillon, montre poignée, que j'avais présentée à Bâle, et c'était un peu trop tôt, les gens n'ont pas compris ce que je faisais. En 99 c'était prêt, on a exposé à Bâle avec l'Académie. Et puis c'était mes premières visibilités de montre prêt-à-porter, parce que la marque existe depuis 1982, la première fois où j'ai signé ma montre.
And then in the mid-90s, Vianney Halter, Felix Baumgartner, Martin Frey, Ulrich, and with the adventure of Global 4C was not just about building a brand. It was really about the inventions, the innovations, bringing something new, opening new chapters, new avenues for mechanical watchmaking, pushing precision, bringing back that hand finishing.
And it's interesting how at that time, all these these people that we kind of look up to right now as, horological gods, if you will, you could just pick up the phone or write an email and order one of these pieces. Collecting independence is about, your enthusiasm for a watchmaker as an artist, your enthusiasm for his pieces as an artwork, and also it reminds me a lot of kind of in Renaissance times, as a patron, the Medici family was a patron of the arts. You're really sponsoring and kind of directly impacting this watchmaker's ability to make his creations.
Je pense que ce genre de mouvements sont aussi faits parce que il y a un horloger qui voit un autre horloger qui fait quelque chose et puis justement il donne le OK et puis il dit tiens c'est possible. Donc du coup ça nous rassure quelque part. Le déclic et me dire tiens je me lance, c'est vraiment ces horlogers, c'est Kari Vikilainen, c'est Journe, c'est Philippe Dufour. Et c'est ce qui m'a donné envie de me dire, bah tiens, je peux faire aussi ma propre montre.
When I started in 91, we were all crazy geeks speaking to crazy geeks. And we're like a few hundred speaking to a few thousand. Nobody was interested in mechanical watchmaking. So it was pure passion, pleasure, defending something which was undefendable. I still have that today in independent watchmaking. I still feel that craziness, that passion for something which is exceptional, which is beautiful and human in independent watchmaking. The big change is the rise of the superpowers, is the rise of the super brands. Except for Rolex, already in those days, there was no very big brand.
In the span of 12 months, all these large industrial watch manufacturing groups occurred. The next thing they did was then integrate backwards as well as integrate forwards. We saw during this period of time the aggregation of component suppliers into these groups.
And we have seen the integration within the manufacturers of many different crafts that were before only made by independent people. And typically, for example, this is also the case for decorative crafts, métiers d'art, for example, enamelers or guillocheurs, engravers. That was the best way to ensure the development and also the possibility to train new people rather than to have only independent artists who could disappear one day or another.
Audemars Piguet has indeed increased our in-house production, but we also continue to rely on suppliers in a very meaningful way. Part of that is the preservation of these small independent companies here in the Vallée des Joux and also in the surrounding area, because we too are a supplier. We too supply movements and components to other companies. So we have great sensitivity towards the importance of keeping those small companies independent.
Once the consolidation of the industry at the manufacturing level had been complete, the next step was to essentially close that last mile gap with the end consumer. Over this period of time, we saw the proliferation of standalone boutiques by watch brands.
We shifted from a distribution mode which was very much into wholesaler agents in countries into a world which is much more about retail. So I think it changed quite a lot.
Au début des années 2000, les indépendants, je ne parle pas pour moi, hein, mais je parle pour les indépendants, les artisans, on va dire, indépendants artisans, les clients, s'ils étaient intéressés, allaient acheter plus ou moins en direct ou parfois ça passait par un détaillant. Aujourd'hui, la différence en 20 ans, c'est que ce sont vraiment les détaillants qui les cherchent. Bon, pas tous, parce qu'il y a des détaillants qui vivent avec Rolex, ils n'ont pas besoin d'autre chose. Mais s'ils aiment vraiment l'horlogerie, ils vont chercher des indépendants.
I also believe that at a specialist multi-brand watch retailer, because of the fact that we are diversified in our brand offering, we are diversified in our geography, it lends itself to the ability of our specialist to then be able to compare, contrast watches in a very different manner than you would if you walked into a single brand boutique. And I think every brand and every watch tells a different story in itself. And being a collector, you want to be part of all these different stories and narratives.
I think that the time of massive communication budgets for luxurious watch brands is over, and that we are back to a sincere horology. Probably again thanks to the independent, but also because customers want to know what they're buying is something that we want to know about. What's the trick? So you have to give access to part of the trick, like any good magician would do, but you also have to explain how it came to birth.
I think the internet made possible the access to what is watchmaking to incredibly large audience. And I think it really changed totally the world of watchmaking.
Well, it all started with the forums. Time Zone and Purists. They were the first actually communities who helped us get known and actually connect us to people who are actually interested in it.
There were a lot of local collectors in the Bay Area who were gathering together, like, once a month for a luncheon on the weekend. I remember it was at Ming's in Palo Alto, and people would bring watches and share and, get together and talk about their hobby, And it was interesting because that also kind of coincided with my interest in independent watchmaking, because at the time, the Purist was like the place to discuss, I think cutting edge or avant-garde watchmaking, including the independent watchmakers.
Then came the bloggers, and we owe again so much to them. And then came social media. So it's been like this for the better part of 20 years, where one community has helped another, etc., etc. Again, I don't think we would be where we are, all of us, without those three types of communities.
Hodinkee from the beginning was a place for me to express myself, and then I quickly realized that it was a great kind of lightning rod for other people like myself and yourself to kind of gather and discuss this topic and become kind of part of a community. And so I would just go there out of my own interest, and I'd bring a little Sony, handheld camera and a Canon S90 or S95 and take photos with me. And then I would just post them online, and people would love them. And and I think that was what allowed this thing to kind of really flourish in the early days, which was that I was not influenced at all by the other kind of editorial properties out there, because I didn't know they existed, or the industry. I didn't know what a publicist was. I didn't know what a press junket was. I didn't know that there was marketing around any of this stuff. I was just writing about the stuff that I loved.
The importance in this business is firstly having an audience, but not just a large number of people, but also the right people. Not necessarily people with money to buy expensive watches, but people who appreciate watches, people who know what you're writing about, who are intelligent in how they approach the hobby.
Here's the thing, Hodinkee didn't make money for the first 3 years. I was in grad school. I was taking out loans to kind of get things going. And I think, that has allowed us all, and now, the magazines have kind of followed suit of myself and Ariel and Frank and Robert Jan and others, of course, and said hey, we should look at what consumers want. We're not going to dictate to them what they want. We're going to listen to them. And if they want to see another Snoopy Speedmaster, we're going to give it to them. And this time it's not going to be a limited edition because there was so much demand for the first one.
Most of the large online media platforms or magazines have become retailers. In ways large and small, and at the same time, more broadly speaking, this convergence is happening in other segments of the industry as well. Watch retailers now, most of them have their own in-house magazines online. Auction houses have their own in-house magazines as well. So this convergence is happening through all segments of the industry.
I remember the first watch auctions I attended. I would say it was maybe 95% dealers and 5% collectors, versus now I would say it's, maybe not 95, but 90% collectors and 10% dealers. It used to be kind of an inside thing where the dealers would go and buy and sell in the auctions and then bring stuff back to their collectors. But now it's kind of democratized and available for everybody.
I think the awareness and the respect that watches have garnered since 2000 has increased, and that is because we're no longer a community of maybe a few hundred nerds who come in person with a paddle to bid in an auction, but today there are tens and tens, if not hundreds of thousands, keen, crazy, passionate, educated watch collectors out there. The more players we have, the more fair and balanced it is. The more we can say after an auction, now specifically speaking, the more correct a price is. It's not just two giants battling it out, but a price that is broadly supported by a large community.
The base has also grown in art. 40, 50 years ago, a young man, 25 years ago, was not so much interested in art. It came maybe later. The collectors were much older. Today, collectors are 20 years old, 25 years old, 30 years old. So we are in this trend. The watch industry is also in this trend. And social media enters easily into the millenniums, better than any other advertisement. So in the past, when we didn't have social media at that level, we had obstacles to reach the young generation. Now, thanks to social media, the young generation is up to date like anybody else.
I think 20 years ago, the watch industry was really the preserve of a much older generation of enthusiasts and collectors. Today, watch enthusiasts, watch collectors begin as early as in their teens. So we have many clients, many enthusiasts who are beginning their journey in watch collecting as early as 15.
Now, the average watch consumer that we see on our site, and probably the same for Revolution and probably the same in your auction, etc., are quite a bit younger. You know, we're talking like early 40s, sometimes late 40s if we're talking, you know, bigger pieces. And sometimes you have people in the teens, you know, teens and 20s.
We see is a lot of these brands right now are relying on historical elements of some of their watches, or going back to historical designs and kind of refreshing them and bringing them out for a more modern audience. And you know, that approach, while it's hit and miss sometimes, I will say generally when the brands care enough about something and do it the right way, usually the collector's audience is very receptive to that.
I think that's the key difference, is we can pull from the whole scope of history today, we could project into the future, we can have techniques from the past. The Audemars Piguet concept in 2002 demonstrated that a high-end watch company, still committed to hand finishing, could remix a watch in a completely different way, where those traditional barriers between case dial and movement dissolve, and you end up with something entirely new, entirely novel, that had never been conceptualized before, that had never been thought of before. So the 21st century has been about this combination of very innovative design, pulling from cues outside of watchmaking culture and bringing that into the culture of watchmaking.
The re-editions, this vintage flair has been super powerful and trendy for the last years. Here at Tag Heuer, we have treasures in our pockets that you can come here to enjoy in our museum in La Chaux-de-Fonds. But most important, we also have our pockets full of ideas that come from our research and development center that are things coming from brains that has never been thought before. So I think we are super well equipped for the next at least 20 years.
This is the Hublot from 1980, and that is the facelift in 2004, which means 24 years later, we have brought to Hublot a facelift on the look. So people said, what a great name, bam! And the name is worldwide the same pronunciation. And then people said, what a strong watch, how macho, bam! And then a few said, hey, but this looks like an AP, like a Royal Oak. And we said, no, it looks like a Hublot. Look, this is the Hublot 1980. It's just a facelift. And then people said, wow, clever. And then the success was huge.
You know, one of the things is that a watch is really like a beautiful piece of artwork that you can wear on your wrist. You know, you could be very stressed out at work or whatever and look on your wrist and see this nice Daytona and kind of, you know, brings a smile to your face or whatever. I think that, you know, the watch industry, collectible market is still, you know, it's on very solid footing and will continue to attract more people to it, and also we'll see values continue to rise.
Je pense que de plus en plus, l'artisanat est recherché parce que ça a une connotation plus artistique. Et la deuxième, le client parle avec quelqu'un. Et la troisième, le produit est plus rare.
Le choix que j'avais fait d'aller chez François-Paul Journe était vraiment, c'était vraiment un rêve pour moi de pouvoir y aller, de pouvoir regarder, apprendre et comprendre en fait. Il a réussi à construire un monde, une philosophie Et je voulais absolument apprendre ça.
Recep is young, and to be so young and already so close to perfection from the tradition is extremely interesting. It tells us that young people can also master the art at the ultimate level. It's an evolution of tradition. And if tradition gets evolution, that's the best way to keep tradition alive. If tradition is only repeated, even at the best level, it's a repetition. So tradition has to move, has to evolve, has to adapt, has to connect.
On peut s'exprimer et on n'est pas obligé de suivre juste une voie qui est prédéfinie et puis suivre peut-être des structures qui sont un peu plus grandes, mais se dire juste que j'ai le choix. Je peux aller là, je peux aussi aller là, mais je peux aussi faire ma propre vision. Je peux aussi être libre.
I just think we have to get back to individuality here and respecting other people. And I think we can do it. You know, I think that this world is going through a rough patch, we can say, at scale. And I think, as the tides kind of continue to kind of move forward, we hope that a more respectful tone kind of returns to certainly not just the watch industry, but the world at scale.
It's not a business for us. It's our life. It's the way we express ourselves. None of the people I'm close to ever started a brand thinking, oh, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to make any money. That's absolutely not the point. They did it because they needed to express themselves. And it's a very, very difficult world. Creating a mechanical timepiece as complex and as beautifully made as we do in the small independent brands is hugely complex with very little means. I don't think 99% of the people who actually even enjoy buying the pieces realize how difficult it is. And we need to stay together. We need to huddle. I mean, it's a bit like the penguins on the Arctic. It's so cold that if you don't huddle together, you're going to die of cold. And we intuitively realize that we actually, of course, we're not competitors. We're friends. We're people who help each other.
We are part of a much bigger market and planet, and if we don't syndicate a little bit, we will just, be one thing among others that you can buy, but no real purpose and not showing the beauty of our art and of our craftsmanship.
What we hope is for the watch industry that the passion will continue, the magic of the mechanical watch will still be able to be appreciated around the world and spread. It's a positive mission. I mean, you have to think that for Global 4C we have been able to build a team here of over 100 passionate people who can all follow their craft, their profession, and grow with that. We have quite a lot of young people, so we're renewing that on the way. And certainly for Robert and myself, the idea is to really secure that and to be able and enable that to continue far into the future, because there's so much to do.
The important thing is that traditional hand finishing remains in place. We can't lose these skills and lose these talents. If one generation misses, they're gone. So I love futuristic form language. I love seeing us push further in terms of design, but the methods by which those watches are created have to remain with traditional techniques in place. We cannot afford to lose that expertise, lose that knowledge, because that's the soul of high-end watchmaking.
The big changes are that people have realized that you buy a watch for other reasons than to read time. We produce soul on the wrist. We give soul to the wrist. We give eternity to the wrist. We give beauty to the wrist. We give status to the wrist. So we are the best partner for people.